In this edition of Southern Newsweek, the first heavy snowfall of the season blankets the south. A family home is destroyed by fire in Invercargill. And Otago school choirs take part in the Big Sing. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. The southern regions felt winter's bite on Wednesday, with snow blanketing much of the region. Inland areas such as Queenstown and Wanaka received a healthy dose, while Dunedin's hill suburbs were also hit.
Early morning Queenstown was a picture of winter today, with a decent dump of snow on the ground. But the picturesque powder wasn't without its issues. A truck blocked the road near Queenstown. It wasn't all doom and gloom, with local children making the most of the wintry blast. While in the Dunedin suburb of Balnow's, people went about the snow day routine of clearing their windscreens. Most Dunedin schools opened on time, but the hill suburb schools delayed their start by an hour or two. Big fat flakes of powdery snow were falling for most of the morning north of the city. Kilmog resident Del McLeod captured these images of some of the snow that closed the northern motorway for a time. Mount Cargill was also closed for a few hours, but opened this afternoon. Forecasters predict more snow could be on the way. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
Fire crews have contained a blaze which swept through an Invercargill house and left a teenage boy hospitalised on Wednesday afternoon. Fire services were called just after 2 o'clock to the home in Centre Street near Glenarmond Crescent.
The aftermath of a large blaze in Invercargill today. Firefighters found this suburban Invercargill home well involved when they arrived on the scene.
Took the guys about 10 minutes to get on top of that. So the first machine arrived from Kingsville. We've had 4 appliances arrive here through the duration of the fire. So the first crew that arrived, it took them a good 10 minutes to get on top of the fire, but they successfully managed to sort of stop the fire from spreading through the rest of the house.
A 16-year-old boy was treated at the scene for moderate injuries before being transported to Southland Hospital. It's unknown whether his injuries were caused by smoke inhalation.
So the young occupant who was in the house at the time who noticed the fire has managed to successfully evacuate the property and has notified the fire service. At that point we've arrived to find the house quite well involved in fire.
The back of the house was extensively damaged, but firefighters managed to largely contain it from spreading to the rest of the property.
Look, yes, there was smoke alarms in the house. Unfortunately, the smoke alarms didn't actually have batteries in them, so the smoke alarms didn't activate for the occupant. Now, with that, the occupant was obviously awake and aware of the fire at the time, so that hasn't sort of had any significant difference to the fire itself. That obviously the occupant was well aware of what was taking place in the first place. But if this event had been at night time, it does pose serious risks for the occupants of the house.
He says the fire serves as a warning that smoke alarms are useless unless they have batteries. Dominic George, The South Today.
Friends of Southland Entertainer of the Year Lockie Hayes have put his name forward to be the opening act for his music idol. Bob Dylan is set to tour New Zealand in August, and Hayes' friends are pushing for the young Southland artist to play before his muse.
I wandered to the pine.
Southland man Lockie Hayes delivers his own blues track at his Tokanui home near the Catlins, where his love of the genre was born. Hayes got his first taste of Bob Dylan as a young boy, a moment which shaped him as a musician.
I love Bob Dylan. I think he's incredible. A lot of people don't like his voice and things, but I love it. I love his songwriting. Yeah, he's definitely the biggest influence on me musically. My father had a CD of his greatest hits or something, and I lay down by the CD player just with my hand on the skip button, just skipping back to the song, just listen to it again and again. I think it was Subterranean Homesick Blues. I just listened to it again and again and again.
Now a Facebook page has been started by Hayes' friends in the hopes the 22-year-old will live his dream of opening for Dylan during his New Zealand tour in August. Hayes said the page has been great exposure for his music career, with his videos being viewed thousands of times.
I did a going live thing, which is for New Zealand Music Month on Facebook, and that was organised by the lead guy from Good Shirt, Rodney his name is, and I asked him about it, and he said he had seen it and he had put it forward, and he knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, but he actually came back and said that apparently Bob Dylan doesn't have people open for him, so, but he said your name's in there, so that's still something.
While he's not holding his breath, Hayes said opening for Bob Dylan would top off what has been the biggest year of his life.
I won Southland Entertainer of the Year, and then my son was born a few days later, and then if this would happen, it would make this the most incredible year ever. It already has been the most incredible year ever, but if it kept getting better, that would be good.
The humble musician said he's not pushing too hard for the opportunity, but appreciates the efforts of his friends who want nothing more than the next generation bluesman to team up with the voice of a generation. Sharon Rees, The South Today.
And I turned and I ran back towards the light.
And from one singer to many, Wednesday saw the region's school choirs vying for supremacy in this year's Big Sing. 20 Otago schools have been on show, all aiming to be selected to perform at the national finale in Wellington later this year.
The sweet sound of choral harmonies filling the town hall as choir after choir perform in the annual Big Sing. The event is one of the high notes of the singing calendar for school choirs, and organisers say the judging is a task not to be taken lightly.
Both of these sessions are recorded for adjudication reasons, and we have an adjudicator who is sitting up in the gallery listening, recording and writing constructive reports for each of the choirs.
Along with the 20 competing choirs, 2 newly formed choirs have been given the chance to take part and learn from the experience.
We say just come along and be a part of the whole process and enjoy and listen and get new ideas for repertoire. So we have 2 of those choirs here this year. We've got Kaikorai Valley, and we really welcome them back, and they've done a great job coming along today. And King's High School also had a new male choir, Pacifica, singing, so we heard some great singing from them today.
Some of the choirs may well go on to compete later this year at the national finale in Wellington.
This year's adjudicator, Mark Durrell, will be meeting with our other adjudicators later in June, and they'll get together and think about all the 600 odd choirs that they have been hearing around the country, and from there 24 will be selected for the finale in Wellington in August.
Dunedin is set not only to host the regional event again next year, but the Big Sing national finale as well. Rudy Adrian, The South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, Dunedin's student flats are celebrated in a new book, and a collection of light sculptures attract over 50,000 visitors to Queenstown. Welcome back. A car burst into flames at a Toyota dealership in Frankton on Wednesday afternoon. It's thought the fire may have happened because the car had been filled with the wrong fuel.
Fire is one way to stay warm from the cold in snowy Queenstown, but that wasn't the intention at this Frankton Toyota dealership today. Emergency services say the car had been brought in for repairs and caught fire when it was turned on. The engine and front of the car were well ablaze once fire services arrived, but the flames were extinguished in minutes of their arrival. It is thought the fire was the result of incorrect fuel in the car's fuel tank. The motor dealership was unavailable for comment. Rudy Adrian, The South Today.
With the days of dilapidated North Dunedin villas potentially numbered, a couple of Otago University researchers believe their new publication will go down in the history books. Sarah Gallagher and Dr. Ian Chapman have put together a book called Scarfy Flats, bringing readers the stories behind some of Dunedin's iconic student haunts.
From Pink Flat the door to the Libra Flat our pad, Dunedin's student quarter has become synonymous with witty monikers for the traditional scarfy dive. Now many of these flats are about to be immortalised in a new book.
We're going to be focusing on about 30, but there's going to be lots of photos of other flats as well. So hopefully everyone's going to be able to find something really recognisable that they remember from their days.
Gallagher's been researching Dunedin flat names for nearly 20 years. She was joined for this project by senior music lecturer Dr. Ian Chapman, whose interest in the topic was sparked while working on another book about the famous Dunedin sound.
I so enjoyed immersing myself in things Dunedin. I thought, what else is iconic about this place? And having been a lecturer here for nearly 2 decades, I thought, of course, the Scarfy Flats. They're a very iconic feature of Dunedin student life.
About 600 named flats have been referenced, some of them dating back as early as the 1930s, but recent efforts to improve North Dunedin's housing stock is likely to spell the end of the traditional student hovel.
And of course, students should not live in squalor, but some of the iconically really bad flats are disappearing now, and I think, in 10 years' time, the student flatting experience in Dunedin might be quite different to what it's historically been.
Which may also spell the end of flats being given a name as the more colourful houses make way for modern dwellings.
It's really reflective of the state of the house. Often there's pop culture references too, so it might be to literature or it might be to films, it might be to their favourite music, their favourite band.
Scarfy Flats is set to hit coffee tables early next year. Dominic George, The South Today.
And the Queenstown Gardens were lit up last weekend as part of the annual Luma Festival. The festival has enjoyed steady growth since its inception in 2015, when it featured just 4 light sculptures.
Iridescent, glowing and twinkling light displays amongst the trees. This year's Luma Southern Light project showcased 29 different light sculptures along the Queenstown Gardens pathways. Powered by an army of volunteers, the event attracted more than 50,000 visitors during the 4 nights on Queen's birthday weekend. Unlike other light festivals around the world, artists are encouraged to improvise their installations with the garden environment. Trust Chairman Duncan Forsyth says the Luma Festival aims to provide free entertainment for both locals and visitors to enjoy during the traditional quiet time between summer and winter tourist seasons. The event has a strong emphasis on minimising rubbish and recycling waste, keeping the show in harmony with the environment. And Forsyth says he would like in future years to see the event expand with additional light installations elsewhere in Queenstown over the entire month of July. Rudy Adrian, The South Today.
And a former Stewart Island oyster farmer has hit out at the Ministry for Primary Industries after his first compensation offer came back at just a fraction of his original claim. Bluffman Rodney Clark had millions of oysters removed from Big Glory Bay after the outbreak of the deadly parasite Bonemia austrae, and says the Ministry's compensation offer is a rip-off.
After months of waiting, former Bluff Oyster Company General Manager Rodney Clark has received his first offer of compensation. He was one of the oyster farmers affected by the mass removal of oysters from Stewart Island's Big Glory Bay in June last year, after the parasite Bonemia austrae was detected in the area. But Clark says despite comprehensive records kept by his company, the Ministry for Primary Industries has offered him just a fraction of what he's owed.
22 cents on the dollar. And we've given them the information, we've supplied them with photographs. They're actually telling us that we couldn't have sold the amount of oysters we had. It doesn't even begin to address our company's situation in terms of what we owe.
Clark said he's been a broken man since the day his oysters were removed, and that he and his wife are living on income from a part-time job, loans from friends and food he catches himself. He said MPI have wrongly calculated the compensation offer by using numbers from other oyster farms.
I just want MPI to deal with this properly and not try and rip us off. Not try and offer us 22 cents on the dollar when we can show them the size of oysters and the number of oysters and what we were selling them for. When we can produce the evidence, I don't expect them to use somebody else's claim on mine.
He said the directors of the company would discuss the offer, but that it was an insult that needed to be addressed.
We've been put in a very difficult situation because we desperately need money. But the claim they put in, we still have to address our legal obligations in terms of paying back. The shareholders can't take anything. We have to make sure, we have to work under the Companies Act, that all creditors are paid before any shareholders get anything. So we have to have our claims addressed and addressed fairly.
Clark said another 7 claims are still being processed by the ministry, totalling around $70 million. A spokesperson for the ministry said today that MPI had approved and offered payments of approximately $622,000 in compensation to 3 claimants, and that a further 21 claims are still being assessed. Sharon Rees, The South Today.
Australian artist Jonathan Jones has launched an illuminating exhibition at the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. He is of Aboriginal descent and is recreating ancient designs using fluorescent lights.
Let there be light. This impressive installation in the Dunedin Public Art Gallery is the work of Australian Aboriginal sculptor Jonathan Jones. When researching ahead of the Dunedin exhibition, he visited Otago Museum to see what Aboriginal artefacts were in their collection.
They had a number of things from where my family's from, so we're Wiradjuri people, and we're sort of 3 key rivers in our country, and there's a boomerang there from the Lachlan River, and so that's a key river in our country, so I sort of got quite connected to that little boomerang.
The Sydney-based artist is a member of the Wiradjuri and the Kamilaroi nations of southeast Australia. He says there are close ties between Australia and New Zealand, as taonga from each country's First Nations were regularly traded during early colonial times.
And I guess New Zealand and Australia has some really strong colonial relationships that most people aren't completely aware of. And so there's these sort of museum relationships, and I think what's interesting is, Indigenous communities actually can help unpack those colonial relationships and sort of talk about them in some different ways.
Growing up with his grandfather, who he describes as a hoarder, Jones says building things out of whatever was lying around just came naturally. Although his works are made from modern materials, his art is inspired by nature.
At a very early stage, I started sort of mapping designs. So a lot of these sort of markings happen on shields and boomerangs and clubs. So I started mapping those stories and just using light. So that they sort of emerge out of that practice.
Daryl Baser, The South Today.
And still to come on Southern Newsweek, hoarfrost blankets part of central Otago, and a Southland farmer is out of pocket despite his cattle not being infected with M. bovis. Welcome back. The animated window display of elves making chocolate at Dunedin's Cadbury factory has been covered up once and for all. The move follows the closure of the shop and cafe located in the former chocolate factory.
From Cadbury to Cadbury to the once happy elves who laboured industriously for many years in the Cadbury window display on Dunedin's Cumberland Street have now been blacked out. The window was covered yesterday by signage company MCK Design and Print, who were formerly regular contractors for the Cadbury company. The chocolate factory closed earlier this year with around 200 staff made redundant, and that's left visitors to the city disappointed they can't get a taste of the famous factory.
Well, we did hope to be able to do a tour. I thought that the tours, but then I had it in the back of my mind that somebody told me that they'd closed. So we were a bit disappointed. But I'm very disappointed about the whole Cadbury's factory going from Dunedin.
MCK Design and Print say the window display has been covered to avoid any ongoing confusion about whether it was still open. Dominic George, The South Today.
And if you felt cold this winter and you're not in central Otago, consider yourself lucky. Although it may look beautiful, hoarfrost is a visual reminder of freezing temperatures that have hit the region.
The historic suspension bridge at Ophir has been swallowed by hoarfrost-covered willows in the last few days, appearing like a bridge to nowhere. Road signs, branches and fences all show the signs of freezing air. A hoarfrost has blanketed fruitlands since the end of last week, but it's too early to know if the mercury will drop to the -21 degree record set in 1996. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
And the bone-chilling hoarfrosts were all part of what Brass Monkey motorcycle rallygoers signed up for. Over 1,000 bikers braved the freezing depths of central Otago over Queen's birthday weekend.
It was cold enough for the proverb to be true. If there were brass monkeys on bikes in central Otago at the weekend, there's a good chance they'd have been neutered. The 38th annual Brass Monkey Rally at the Idaburn Dam attracted 1,050 people, which organisers say is a lower turnout than in previous years.
It's colder than most years. Since the 80s, I can remember, I think it was minus 22 one year, and we thought that was the coldest, and then the 90s and the 2000s just got warmer and warmer. But this year the clock's turned back. I don't think the global warming's happened this year.
Norton Owners Club New Zealand President Murray McLean travelled from Golden Bay like he's done for the past 34 years and says Danzi's Pass is always a test of machine and rider.
Long way, I'm 12 hours from Timaru and then another 4 or 5 hours from Timaru to here. We always come up over Danzi's Pass. We've pushed through snow, we've suffered all sorts of adversity. One year I had 6 punches on Danzi's. We've had a lot of fun. This is part of the culture of New Zealand society. This is great, motorcycle rallying.
Brass Monkey Committee member John Williams confirmed it was a very cold year.
The weather, although it's played ball as far as the Brass Monkey Rally is concerned, being really cold, was minus 11.7 about 7 o'clock this morning here. So it's one of the coldest rallies we've had for a long time. So the rally's lived up to its name.
Williams says last year's rally drew a crowd of around 1,300, while only just over 1,000 hardy souls took part this year. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
A Southland farmer says he would be in a better position if his cattle actually were infected with Mycoplasma bovis. Ngāi Tahu have cancelled their contract with John Young, who says he's now staring down the barrel of financial hardship.
Unwanted and rejected, Southland farmer John Young has raised 1,000 calves for Ngāi Tahu, but they've cancelled their contract with him in the light of the Mycoplasma bovis saga.
Stock agent received a text message from Ngāi Tahu's stock agent saying that their Ngāi Tahu lawyers had decided that we were unable to prove the stock were free of disease and that they didn't want to proceed.
Young says he took care to source the calves from trusted suppliers, but he says communication between the iwi and the farm has at times been frustrating.
They never actually specified what disease they were talking about. The implication was that it was the M. bovis, but never come out and said so much.
That's despite the Ministry for Primary Industries giving the calves a clean bill of health.
I approached MPI and they said, well look, if there was any links, we would have shut you down by now.
Ngāi Tahu offered him a settlement of $10,000, but Young reckons that'll still leave him about 150 grand out of pocket. The delay means the calves have consumed a lot of extra feed, and now he's having to sell them at a heavily reduced price.
Communication's pretty much stopped with them in the meantime. We're trying to get them sold for whatever we can get for them because we simply can't afford to keep feeding them. And then we'll try and address the balance there with them down the track.
Ngāi Tahu haven't responded to calls and emails asking for comment. Rudy Adrian, The South Today.
And finally, one way to keep warm this long weekend is to swing like it's the Great Depression. The Dunedin Midwinter Swing Festival is set to heat up the city this weekend with dances from the 1920s to the 1940s.
They're going to party like it's 1929. Dancers from across the country and teachers from around the world are swinging into Dunedin ahead of the 3rd Midwinter Swing Festival this weekend. Festival Committee Chair Matt Jenkins says the event is an opportunity to attract dancers and teachers to Dunedin.
There's a few scenes around New Zealand, Christchurch, Auckland, Wellington, notably Nelson as well. And we really get them all here, as many people as possible. Also Australia, there's a big scenes in Melbourne and Brisbane, so they'll be coming here as well hopefully. And we also get international teachers, so this year we're very lucky.
to have 2 teachers from Sweden coming over.
Swing dancing incorporates styles popular from the 1920s to the 1940s, such as the Charleston, Lindy Hop and blues. Jenkins says swing in Dunedin is popular with students and the scene in the city is vibrant, especially with 20-somethings.
Dunedin's got a very vibrant swing dancing scene. Obviously it's a big student population, so we get lots of people from the student community come and join. It's a transient city, so people come and go all the time, but we've got a really good core of people that stay in Dunedin.
The festival leaps into action tonight with a ball at the Savoy, a fitting venue as the building is from the same period as the dancers.
Lindy Hop actually originated in the Savoy in Harlem, New York, so now we're actually bringing it to Dunedin and having this amazing event over there. So it's this great old ballroom, it's got an amazing floor to dance in, it's a lot of history and nostalgia there. So,
unless you're a mime artist, there can't be dancing without music. And Dunedin swingers, the Rinky Tinky Jingle Jangle Jazz Club, are setting the tempo. The event is set to climax on Saturday night with the South Island Swing Dance Competition at Toitu, featuring entrants from New Zealand and Australia. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. Get online and check us out on Facebook or keep up with Southern News via our website, channel39.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.